Thank you. You know, as I was telling some people earlier today, I've been brewing for 400 years. You know, so I have crossed oceans of time to meet with you.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You are one of the great big names of the brewing world. How does it feel to be somebody, I mean, who's like a huge name of this?
Well, it's a strange thing because it seems like just yesterday that I was like this kid that people didn't listen to, you know. It's like, what do you know? You know, who the hell are you to come tell us that we should make IPA this way or, you know, whatever else. And now, you know, people call me sir. You know, I'm like, sir? Like my dad, like, you know, or Mr. Oliver. I'm like, Mr. Oliver? Like my dad was Mr. Oliver. I'm not Mr. Oh. It's like, yeah, I guess I'm old. It happens.
I know. But let's go back to the beginning. I mean, this wasn't the career you were planning for yourself.
No, I plan to direct. You know, my degree is in broadcasting and film, which I realized when I got out of university that qualified me to drive any colored taxi cab that I wanted. You know, and so you know, I started. Yes, I was making some small films in New York City, but I quickly left and moved to London, and I was stage managing rock bands.
Oh, that's a cool career as well.
Yes, I put on some great bands, you know, Cocktail Twins, Billy Bragg. I took the Ramones bowling. So,
nice.
You know, did some cool stuff back in the day. But at the same time, I was falling in love in England with British traditional beer, cask beer. And then I went traveling to Czechoslovakia, and I went to Belgium, and I went to Germany. And I never had Weiss beer before. I never had all these lambics and everything else. And I got back to New York and they said, Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light. I said, oh no.
So the American beer culture was really kind of a like-minded driven.
We had no American beer culture. There was no American beer culture. But we did have an American beer culture in the past. I mean, in the 1800s, you know, in Brooklyn, there were 48 breweries. Those 48 breweries made 15% of all the beer in the United States. We had Weiss beer specialists. We had sour beer specialists. We had lots of IPA brewers. We had people who brewed mostly porter. You know, we had a very wide range of beers being made. Plus we had, at the same time, the most interesting food culture in the whole world because we had everybody from everywhere. So, you know, we had Finnish neighborhoods and Chinese neighborhoods and Mexican neighborhoods and Caribbean neighborhoods, you know, and so we had everybody and everything. And then we went into the 20th century and we disappeared into the matrix. And it is inside the matrix where I grew up. And they told us there was one kind of bread, and there were 3 kinds of cheese, and there were 3 flavors of ice cream, and there was 1 kind of beer, and we believed it. You know, because we never saw anything else. And then when I moved to, when I first came to Europe, you know, I went to my first cheese shop in Paris, and I was like, how can there be a cheese shop? There's only 3 cheeses. They said, well, we have, you know, and I'm like, what's that smell? It is the fromage, monsieur. Like, I said, no, I've had all 3 cheeses and none of them smell like that. And so, like, we knew nothing. We knew nothing about beer, we knew nothing about food. And I came back to the United States and I was angry. You know, like we've been tricked our whole life. They told us that this was beer and it wasn't even beer. And so I started making beer. Well, it didn't taste like beer, it didn't look like beer. It wasn't made the way beer was made, and it wasn't made from what beer was made from. What we had was a beer facsimile. That's what the Matrix is. You take away the reality and you replace it with a simulation. And we had simulated bread and simulated cheese and simulated beer. And it wasn't even a good simulation. Like once we tasted the real thing, we're like, well, wait a minute, what the hell is that? It's like, oh, well, that's made from corn and rice and like a bunch of this and a bunch of that. And we're like, that's garbage. And they're like, yeah, but you bought it. So.
Yeah, I agree because I know, I mean, in the 90s, for example, American beer was like a joke in Finland.
Yes.
And it's with extra water, you know,
Yes,
fish
yes.
rubbing it and stuff like that.
When I went to, you know, when I used to go around and I would say to brewers in other country, like, hi, I'm a brewer from the United States, they would say, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we've heard about your American beer. But slowly people started to see that we were doing something different. You know, I spoke at an IPA conference in 1994,
Wow.
run by the British Guild of Beer Writers. Now in 1994, you know, IPA was a relatively obscure, you know, old British style that almost nobody brewed. And the British brewers were making IPA with no hop aroma at 3.5%. So I brought to this conference, I actually flew it over on a plane as my luggage. Gives you an idea that you could bring a keg as luggage in those days. A highly hopped, heavily dry hopped, 6.5%, you know, IPA, dry, bitter, and very aromatic. And the British brewers tasted it. They said, well, that's very funny, but nobody's ever going to drink something like that. Well, it turns out they were a little bit wrong. You know, our original IPA, you know, East India Pale Ale, now known as East IPA, was based on British beers from the 1840s. And now we have 5, 6 other IPAs. You'll find Defender on our booth. And so, yeah, things have progressed in interesting ways.
So you started to brew at home when you came back to the States?
Yes.
Because you were angry about the, you know...
And I wanted to have some beer to drink.
Yes.
You know, my best friend, I kept complaining, this beer is terrible. And finally, for Christmas in 1984, he gave me a Christmas present of a homebrewing kit. And Chaga Pacey in his book, he's like, I'm tired of hearing you complain about beer. Shut up, brew your own. So I did.
And that started your beer career.
I didn't know it at the time, but you know, we say it's a long, slippery slope. And eventually I fell in, you know, so in 1989, I became the apprentice for a guy named Mark Whitty. He was previously the brewmaster for Samuel Smith's in England, and I became his apprentice. And was his apprentice for 4 years, and I learned the professional side of brewing from him. And then I took over as head brewer there. And then a year and a half later, I went to Brooklyn Brewery in 1994.
Wow, so you have been there quite a while.
400 years.
400 years. But you know, we talk about beer, and I don't have any beer in my glass. So I was thinking that maybe we can open one of the beers.
You need to think ahead. I thought ahead.
I know, I just have to try.
Well, do you have an opener?
I have to
see, this is thinking ahead that I'm talking about.
Because we had it yesterday, and we have it today.
Well played. All right, well.
So tell me about this beer.
Well, actually, you know what? We're going to start with dark matter.
All right.
So dark matter is one of the ghost bottles, one of the many things that we make just for fun. We don't sell it. I kind of hope one of these days we'll sell this beer, though. I think it's nice. This is a version of our Brooklyn Brown Ale, which actually is the original brown ale, American brown ale. Originally kind of based on the, you know, on the British brown ale style, but really with more malt presence, etc. So the ghost bottles, you can't buy them. You know, we make them, we pour them at tastings and things. And this was just aged in 4 Roses barrels, bourbon barrels, for several months. As you can see from the color, a nice deep reddish brown. We have a lot of caramel malts and a lot of roasted malts. These give us nice kind of like little chocolate coffee underpinnings, though not too roasty. And then on top of that, you have the vanilla and coconut character coming out of the toasted American oak.
I really love the aroma because it's kind of it has a lot of different flavors and they're all kind of dessert-ish, I would say.
But I was actually worried when we sent this beer to the festival because it's you know, we have it on the stand. It's a couple of years old. I was like, oh, I don't know. You know, a year and a half, 2 years. It's only a 5% beer. but it's held up really well. It really is. It's quite useful tasting. We did a secondary fermentation in the bottle, so this was bottled flat. So this is a much higher level of carbonation than our regular brown ale, which is conventionally bottled. And so, really a different expression of the same thing. People look at barrel-aged beers and they say, well, you've gotten some great ideas from the wine people. You're putting, you guys are great. You're putting your beer in barrels now. And I'm kind of like, yeah, we've been putting our beer in barrels for about 2,000 years now. Thank you. Stainless steel showed up in 1950, people. 1950. That's when you started really seeing stainless steel kegs. Before that, they were aluminum in the United States, and before that, up until the mid-20s, they were all wood.
Yeah.
So wood is what beer was always in, and it's just moving back into it now, but for maybe some different purposes. We're getting some flavors that we want.
I really like this because I mean it's not that typical brown ale because it's a little bit drier, but at the same time it's really nice because the taste is still round.
Yes, and you really get that kind of the bourbon wood character into the finish. A little bit, like I said, that vanilla-like character that comes out of American oak, but not too overwhelming. I mean, with our bigger beers like Black Ops, we'll age for like a year.
Yeah.
This was only a few months because we didn't want to just completely have like something that tastes like you put bourbon in it.
No,
it's relatively subtle. And I think it's really nice with a steak.
Yes, I mean you are famous with like pairing beer and food as well, and you kind of gourmet chef yourself. I heard your food stories as well.
Gourmet, yes, not chef.
Yeah,
I'm a cook. There's a big difference.
So,
now people always say, oh my God, I cook for audiences and whatever else. It's like, you're a great chef. It's like, no, chef runs like a restaurant, where you have to look at the food costs and, you're doing all kinds of things. I think that the home brewer, to the professional brewer is like a home cook to a professional chef. They're really completely different.
So how would you pair? You said that it's really good with a steak. What other meals or food you would pair this one?
Well, this is really nice with particular types of cheese. Gruyères, things like that.